Are you hearing this song? Oh, hello. We are the
Oh, hi.
TransPositions. Hello, hello. I couldn't hear the theme song. I don't know what's going on, but I was like taken off guard by the that's popping up on screen.
You
How are we doing tonight, ladies?
surviving for now.
Good. Glad to hear everybody's surviving. Sometimes that's the most we can do, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the fucking pink.
Mhm. We are still kicking up here in the TransPositions, y'all.
See, until we get monetized, I can say swear words in the first 30 seconds of the stream.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, by the
Well, with the countdown, it's fine.
This is an important night for me because this week celebrates 1 year working with this crew.
Yeah, tomorrow's our birthday.
Yep, TransPositions.
Cherry dancing.
Celebrates 1 year of me being a part of it, and it's been a great ride for the. Looking forward to more.
We love having you here, Carly.
There's a lot.
Even though you make us cry every damn show.
Yeah,
that's true.
The angry good grandpa does anyway. With the help of the angry good grandpa, Carly gets us weeping, and you're gonna weep later in the show.
The chat is saying that you're very quiet, Carly. So,
let me see if I can't do this.
We can boost Carly a little bit. Speaking of the chat, I want to say hi to everybody because I appreciate everybody who turns out every day. We got Professor Marston, Stop the Stupidity, Look at the Trees, The Shaken Fist, Let's Farm. We have the Kentucky Atheist, Hello Joe. Let's see, Captive Desk is in the house, Jester's in the house. Good evening, all my friends. Andrew Christopherson, probably.
Yeah.
Like Chris Christopherson. I love some Chris Christopherson. Being Bobby McGee is like one of the songs that's etched into my heart. We have Robin here.
Hey, troops, how we doing?
Robin's here. Yep. And
sounds
Lena,
better to me.
the beautiful Lena, is in the house as well. And IDK is giving us a little wave, and I'm gonna wave right back to you. So, for those of you who are new to the show, this is the TransPositions. It's a weekly show that we do where we crack open all the news that has unfolded over the weekend and the week so far. So, and since November, it's been pretty grim. I'm gonna be blunt with you.
What's news designed to crack your egg, and that's exactly what we're gonna do.
Yeah, we are here. Yeah, we're gonna crack. If you got an egg to crack, we're gonna crack it. That's how we do. But
what's the plan, Mooneyham?
Do you know how much eggs cost lately?
Right?
Yeah, we're coming for those eggs.
All you eggs out there, you are like top shelf right now. So we're coming for you. I do want to give some.
Remember, I started getting my eggs from a farm. I'm going farm direct for the eggs from now on.
I've thought about getting my own chickens again, but I don't actually own this house, and the neighbors may not appreciate, and there's complications.
Right.
I do want to open tonight's discussion with a follow-up to last week's show, because we did talk about the federal injunction.
Hell yeah.
Judge reinstates nationwide stop to Trump's trans military ban. This is more stuff unfolding regarding this. This is an update from March 26th, so just yesterday. The litigation is not about a medical condition. A medical condition has not given its country decades of military service. People have transgender people. U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes. Anna Reyes, you have no idea how much the trans communities around the country appreciate what you've done for us on this matter.
Strikes again.
Yeah, so a federal judge in Washington, D.C. on Wednesday rejected the Trump administration's attempts to lift court orders blocking its transgender military ban, reinstating a preliminary injunction that protects active duty and prospective service members from discharge. U.S. District Judge Anna Reyes denied the Department of Justice's emergency motion to dissolve the injunction. So
it's after an emergency.
After what we covered last week, basically the the DOJ decided it was a state of emergency and tried to overturn it that way. She issued last week in the Talbot versus the United States, which halted enforcement of Executive Order 14183 and related Pentagon guidance targeting service members with a diagnosed history of gender dysphoria. So they said it's an emergency. We have to get these trans people out of the military. Reyes has paused the implementation of her preliminary injunction, which was scheduled to take effect Friday at 10:01 a.m. The judge said that she would allow the administration time to appeal. The Department of Justice responded by filing last Friday, claiming the Pentagon had issued new guidelines limiting the policy to service members with current medical conditions and not all transgender people, but Reyes was unconvinced. She affirmed, go ahead, Steph.
Yeah, because the policy really, the policy defines being trans as a medical condition. It's the highest form of sophistry, what these guys are trying to pull.
Mm-hmm.
They don't care. They're going to do what they're going to do, and it's not just on this issue. They're doing what they're going to do. You know, let's hold our national security briefings on Signal.
Right.
And just they're incompetent buffoons, but they're cruel, incompetent buffoons, and they basically think they can say and do the most outrageous shit, and they can until somebody fucking stops them.
and they're literally grabbing journalists off the streets for writing bad press about our involvement in the conflict in Gaza, and deporting them and revoking their visas. Things are not going well. We are not in a good place here. Yeah, hoo-ha, trans soldiers. Thank you. Look at the trees. Hopefully we'll can see trans people continue to be able to serve their country if they so choose to. She affirms her findings of the Department of Defense justification for the ban was based on pretexted anti-trans animus. Attorneys for the plaintiff, represented by GLAD Law and the National Center for Lesbian Rights, said in court that the government's filing was a last-minute shenanigan meant to delay compliance and mislead the appellate courts. Yeah, of course. It is shenanigans. It absolutely is. It's trying to it's throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what they can make stick.
Yeah, I just love to see interesting words in actual legal documents. It spruces things up a bit.
It sure does. The administration had argued that newly issued military department identification guidance narrowed the ban to apply only to service members with a current medical condition and not all transgender people. But Reyes rejected that claim as unpersuasive, writing in a blistering 16-page ruling that the government arguments did not sway the court before, regurgitating them with MDI guidance is equally unpersuasive. Get him, Reyes. We appreciate you.
The previous opinion ran to 72 pages, and it was blistering. We covered it.
Scathing.
We covered it last week. It
Yeah,
was absolutely blistering and absolutely true.
Yeah, we might couple that with this in a video release. I don't know. We put them all together. It's a nice little breakdown of the way things have gone so far. Gender dysphoria is not like other medical conditions. Something defendants well know, Reyes wrote. It affects only one group of people. All persons with gender dysphoria are transgender, and only transgender persons experience gender dysphoria. Reyes sharply criticized the government's attempt to reframe the policy as a neutral medical regulation, writing, "This litigation is not about a medical condition. A medical condition has not been given, it has not given its country decades of military service. People have, transgender people."
Fuck yeah.
Yeah. She also dismantled the Defense Department's proposed implementation plan, noting that it would require all 1.3 million active duty troops to self-report annually whether they have ever, currently have, or exhibit symptoms of gender dysphoria, then be flagged as non-deployable and recommended for discharge. The judge compared the plan to rummaging through private medical records and called it the process of NDI guidance requires. So I hate to call back to this notion, but remember that show back in the 70s called MASH, right? Where there was the guy who dressed up in the dresses and pretended that he had gender dysphoria.
Hawkeye.
To try to get out of the military? Yes. Was it Hawkeye? No, it wasn't Hawkeye. It was...
Oh, did multiple people do it? Or am I
well,
thinking
there was an ongoing character.
Yeah,
But
one of the doctors.
It was Corporal Klinger, you children. Jesus Christ.
Yes, okay. Grandma has it. Thank you, Granny. No, yeah, Klinger. And it was an ongoing joke that he could not get the military to kick him out for this reason, right? Trump is trying to make that like a thing that anybody can do. All you have to do is say, hey, gender dysphoria, no draft for you. You don't get drafted into the war. So how does that help the military?
I mean, Captain Bonespurs is eager for as many excuses as he can find.
Yeah, but here's the thing. In reality, that's not going to happen. Especially in the wars that the United States will possibly get into the next 20 or 30 years, because this is going to be different. If this country goes to war, it's going to be going to war over water, over lithium, over food, over whatever drops of oil there are left. And no one's going to care. No one's going to care if you're trans or if you're gay or if you're a femboy who likes to fish. You can be a nice little femboy with an M16. They'll even probably give you a camouflage skirt and programmer socks too. It isn't going to matter. They know it and we know it.
All right. The government tactics are very questionable, Shannon Minter, legal director of LGBTQ plus rights group in CLR, told The Advocate. They seem designed to muddy the waters. These efforts to stall the preliminary injunction from going into effect to protect our transgender troops burden military families with a crushing amount of pressure as they navigate limbo with outcomes that will cause devastating harm to the military careers of these incredible soldiers. Glad Law Senior Director in Transgender and Queer Rights, Jennifer Levy, said in a press release, "It is unthinkable that we should treat this that we would treat this way the brave individuals who sacrificed so much for our country." In her ruling, Reyes agreed she found the policy to be discriminatory in both effect and intent, writing that the new guidance failed to provide any legitimate rationale and instead understood the animus driving the ban. She added that the plan treated gender dysphoria more harshly than any other condition and likely violates plaintiffs' Fifth Amendment rights.
Mhm.
Though
Yes.
Reyes denies the government's request to dissolve or stay the injunction, she granted a short administrative stay until Friday, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time,
Mhm.
to allow the DOJ time to appeal DC Circuit Court of Appeals.
Yeah, she's
This
covering
is
her ass, and she's doing it. She's doing it. She's everything she's doing. She's doing quite intelligently, which is good. And it is good to see the courts standing up. We'll be covering we'll be covering about Democrats lying down, but at least at least one branch is guarding its status as a co-equal branch of government and saying, look it, you can't do this. And even Chief Justice Roberts, in an unprecedented move last week after our last show, steps out and says, hey, you don't like a court's opinion, appeal it. Don't call for the judge to be impeached. Wasn't in this case, it was in the deportation case. We are, constitutional crisis. We're in one.
right. Yeah. So we'll wrap this up. This is all too good. This is all to the good, Reyes wrote, in of the expected appeal. But let's recall that our service members make the debate and appeal possible. The court again thanks them all. So yeah, the main thing is that she's looking out for the people who are saying, "Hey, I want to go out and serve my country and protect my country or whatever." The people who want to serve in the military. Why are we telling them no? You want to serve your country? No, you can't. When we have recruitment at an all-time low in this country, why are we saying, hey, let's cut all these thousands of people, which include, uh, you know, not just soldiers, but doctors and pilots and everything in between.
Specialists of every kind. I mean, the vast majority of trans soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, they've been in for years and years and years. And one of the benefits that keeps them in is access to TRICARE, because it covers their gender affirming care. When you kick them out, you not only bollocks their career and leave a gaping hole in our military preparedness. More on a couple of cases of that in good news later on, but you're also screwing up their healthcare. Like, I don't know if anybody out there may not be familiar, but at a certain point in your transition, you need access to your healthcare or your bones start to decay quickly. That's suboptimal.
I mean, just to get back off what Ember said, the United States military is the largest employer of transgender Americans. And Ember just told you why. Because the main reason is, let's kick the ballistics about being trans in America right now. The unemployment rate for transgender people in this country is about 34%. Add 15% if you're black or brown. Access to health care, access to any health care is a crapshoot in this country, because unlike civilized countries around the world, healthcare is a commodity. It's not a right here. So for many people, the military and risk being a bullet catcher for Halliburton is an incentive to get health care, or to get housing, or to get access to education. And that's the real of it. If we actually were a civilized society, if we actually were a sane, civilized country, we most likely wouldn't be having this discussion tonight. But we are an armed madhouse beholden to corporate and capitalist interest. So that is why you have the condition that you have. And let's take a look at, and also a point about those 15,000 people. Many of those 15,000 are people who work in highly specialized military operations specialties. They are the people that program your weapon systems. They're the people that fly your drones and your satellites. The RAM Corporation did a study on this back in 2022 and found that the majority of your transgender people, they're either non-commissioned officer, they're officers more than they're enlisted. At worst, they're NCOs on average. They're in very highly technical specialties that cost a hell of a lot of money for you to replace. And for example, among the active duty military personnel who are in my life, people I know personally, all of them are in specialties that would cost six figures for the Pentagon to replace and retrain. You think about that. And this isn't the first time we've been here with the don't ask, don't tell discussion. Back in the 90s and 2000s, we ran into the same situation. They found, for example, that a large percentage of the gay and lesbian troops were interpreters. And a good number of them, they said something like 7% of them were Arabic interpreters. Now think about it. You are fighting in a conflict in the Middle East. You kind of need people that can speak Arabic and Farsi.
Yeah, we're literally leaking attack information on Yemen. So, yeah, we need those Arabic translators. We need them.
The thing is, a lot of people think that getting rid of trans troops would be cutting the fat out of the military. No, you're cutting bone and sinew out of the military.
And muscle.
With these curves. Exactly. You're cutting bone, sinew, and muscle. You're cutting the things. And one more point to make. Understand something, because a lot of people think that, oh, these are people in the rear. For every one soldier with a rifle, there are 10 people who back that person up. That's the ratio. For every one person out in the field, every one pilot on the front line in a combat aircraft, there is a support system of at least 10 people aid in that warfighter doing his or her job. And that's the thing that many people have to understand. That is the reality of the military. And I find it very repugnant and very offensive that chicken hawk conservatives, people who send people to war but will never fight in it, are behind this policy. I feel like this. Fine, kick it, troop out. Great. Donald Trump send Baron Trump better have his DD 214. How about all people? JD Vance, send your niece or nephew. That's fine. You don't have to send us, but notice who don't go when it's time to when you're waving the flags and talking crap. See, there's something my grandfather always told me. It's easy to be brave with another person's body, and the chicken hawk conservatives are doing it again.
You know, friends.
Look at
Oh, go ahead,
look
Seth.
at the trees. Look at the trees. It's pointing out that PFC Barry Winchell was murdered by a fellow soldier for dating a trans girl and winning a previous fight with a dude. And that was geez, when did that happen? That was before I transitioned. That was back in the 90s, early 90s, I think. That's long ago.
That's so sad.
And it's just I don't know. For me, it's just well, in that case, it was right in the middle of transition.
Yeah, you say 99?
Yep, July 6th, 1999, Fort Campbell.
I thought it was whatever. I thought it was before 98, but that's all right. Yeah, there you go.
I wasn't familiar with this story at all, so I just looked it up.
Oh, really?
That's like post Matthew Shepard timeline then, because that opened a lot of people's eyes in this country, and I think a lot of people have forgotten the situation with Matthew Shepard, right? But
a lot of people have forgotten how many people died from AIDS because of the kind of neglect that Ronald Reagan showed.
Yeah. So I got one more thing here.
Quite a bit, honestly.
I got one more thing to cover here, but I wanted to ask you all something. Are you all familiar with a mythological character named Cassandra?
The prophet person?
Yes.
Yeah.
Kept screeching that this is what's going to happen. This is what's going to happen. He kept predicting, and no one would believe her because Apollo had cursed her that she'd have premonitions that no one believed, but they'd always come true. I kind of feel justified as a Cassandra when I see stories like this come up.
Hector's sister, Priam's daughter, Cassandra.
Yeah. So we've been saying here at the TransPositions that the only people that are going to be impacted by these bathroom issues are cis women that other cis people have decided don't pass well enough. So this is from Pink News. Chantel Bilson wrote this right up. Cis woman fired after customer accused her of being trans, saying it felt like a stab in the back. So Danny Davis took to Facebook on Monday, March 24th, to ask for advice following her dismissal from Walmart, where she had worked for 7 years. She wrote that she is a cisgender woman who is really tall, 6'4", and gave details of the incident, which she says happened on the 14th of March in a store in, of all states, of course, Florida.
Naturally.
Florida. While she was alone in a toilet, a man entered and began shouting about trans people, claiming he would protect his wife or girlfriend from them, and insinuating that Davis was transgender. All right. She reported the incident to a supervisor, but a week later was informed that she had been sacked for failing to inform a salaried member of management about the interaction, which was deemed a security risk, she said. It felt absolutely awful, hurtful, confusing, and just heartbreaking, Davis told Pink News. I had worked full-time there for 7 years. I worked hard and tried to treat everyone kindly. Being fired so suddenly felt like a stab in the back. And to be let go for being a security risk of all things was just them twisting the knife, especially after what happened. My mom and I decided to put the story on social media just to let people know or maybe warn others of the possible danger, Davis continued. I honestly didn't expect it to gain as much traction as it has, as quickly as it has. She has been inundated with messages, comments, and people offering advice, she said. I've lived in the South where bigotry is an unfortunate part of daily life, she went on to say before revealing that not long ago she was pulled over by police for having a rainbow license plate frame. Walmart scrapped company equality policies in November in the wake of pressure from right wing pundits who threatened to boycott the outlet ahead of Black Friday sale. What happened in November, guys? Do y'all remember?
There was something noteworthy.
Yeah.
It wasn't the anniversary of Guy Fawkes trying to blow up Parliament or something.
Something like that. I don't know. I get so distracted by all the political ads in November that I can't focus on what's going on.
It's the day we went after the transgender craziness.
Yeah.
The day that we voted it out. We voted in common sense.
Took out the
I have all
woke.
the best people. Woman, book, camera, TV. I have all the best people.
Yeah. All right. All right, my transpositions team. Let's start with Ember. What do we got coming up on good news tonight, babe?
Well, we actually do have some good news, which is nice. There's court rulings out of Ohio, a international trans champion, and more stuff on the blocking of the military ban, the ban, you might say. And there's probably some other things too. But also one quick note, next Monday is Trans Day of Visibility. And I just want to make sure we get that mentioned because it's been slipping a lot of people's minds. I can't imagine why. I understand if you're feeling like maybe you should inch back towards the closet a little bit. There's a lot of animus out there right now. But if you're comfortable standing out and being seen, holy fuck, is it more important than ever.
And it's not Trans Day of Vengeance, no matter what they say on Fox News. It's not Trans Day of Vengeance. It's visibility.
The old funny line is sure it's in another closet, but it's got nicer clothes.
Yeah, I want to read what Sumami says here because it's apt for what we talked about with the bathroom thing.
Yay!
Do they not realize they are the creeper in the bathroom, not the person they think is trans? Oh my God! Shout it from the rooftop, girl. I love you. Appreciate you. That is exactly the point. That's what the turf paradox is that they want men to come into women's bathrooms and drag trans women out. So they want men in the women's bathroom to protect them from trans women, from other women. So yeah, let's not sugarcoat that. All right, Carly, what do we got in sports tonight?
Transposition sports. We've got a lot tonight. For starters, we're gonna break down everything that happened with the World Athletics decision. Can you believe it? They're bringing back the ghost of Avery Brundage. They're bringing back chromosomal sex testing to elite sports. Didn't we leave this party in 1999? Gee, Mr. Peabody, did you see Avery Brundage over there laughing his ass off?
Yeah, we're time traveling.
That's going to be interesting. That's going to be in transposition sports, but also we have an interview tonight with Rachel Saunders. Rachel Saunders, for some of you may read her in Medium. She is a trans woman who lives just outside of Nottingham, England, who's a philosopher, a researcher, and she plays field hockey. Well, with England hockey putting up a ban on transgender women from women's competition starting this coming fall, Ray Saunders, who is an avid hockey player, decided, I'm not taking this lying down. She and two other players and two other transfield hockey players in England are putting together a GoFundMe to fund a lawsuit against English hockey directly to overturn this. Also, we got some good news. We have some good news tonight. We're gonna take a special look at Cal Calamia. They're the coolest cat in sports, and they had a winning weekend at the Tokyo Marathon last week. They had a non-binary division in Tokyo for the first time. Calamia was a major part of that happening, and we're going to look into how they did in the race. I'll give you a little hint. They were spectacular. And remember that kid, that high school kid in Oregon last spring who won the state championship, girl named Ada Gallagher? Well, the professional transphobes, like that Riley Gaines character, they're going after her again. And this week, lies came fast and furious from the start of the season. But don't worry, Ada. Auntie Carly is going to break all those lies down. And I can tell you right now, every time they go after some high school kid in this spring sports season, Auntie Carly is watching. Auntie Carly is always watching you. And I'm going to take these people over my knee and rhetorically spank them. That's coming on TransPositions Sports. Stay with us.
Thank you. Yeah, leave them kids alone. All right, Staffan, you kind of hinted to what you're covering later, but what do you got for us tonight?
They're sort of following up on a little bit of a rant on how foolish the many people in the Democratic Party are being when they evade or outright deny having a position on the rights of transgender people, their own constituents, and how it hurts them electorally.
All right. Sounds like we got a great show lined up moving forward. Ember, I know this is where you dip at, so any final words, any words of encouragement as we move into this other hell week of this current administration?
Oh goodness. Stay hydrated, do your best, try to look for the positive things. I promise they are out there. I know the negative nonsense sells, and it's important to keep an eye on what the idiots in charge are up to, but there's always good things too. They're just a little harder to find these days.
And you'll find them in good news usually, though. Just saying.
Yeah.
As Carly, hashtag just saying, as our own Carly Chardonnay Webb has coined.
It's a Carlyism.
A Carlyism, I love it. All right. And I might have some words for you all at the end of the show about if you're going to protest, just some tips and tricks, what you can do if you're actually out there. That'll be at the end of the show, though. Let's go ahead and jump into good news, though. Who's ready for it?
Woo!
Yeah.
We need so much more in this world.
Mm-hmm. Let's do it.
Today on the Trans Agenda, your directive is to get yourself a little treat. If you're transgender, today you need to get yourself a little treat. It can be a snack, a beverage, a nap, perhaps a small doodad, some small thing that makes you happy. Today's optional directives include drink lots of water, eat at least 2 meals, wear something cozy, make some time for something that makes you happy, say hi to someone that you care about, say at least one nice thing to yourself, and conquer at least one small country. Keep your transgender brain chip tuned to ensure that you receive the next directive. And remember, world domination starts with self-care. Now you go and enjoy that treat, you little cutie patootie. Mwah!
Good news, everyone! Tonight, Ohio's healthcare ban denied. Trans wins in court and in competition, and more. Good news starts right now. The 10th District Court of Appeals in Ohio struck the state's ban on trans health care for youth, which itself is amazingly good news. But the way they did it, you're going to love this. Back in 2011, Obamacare was the top culture war issue on every Republican's tongue. How dare the federal government suggest that every citizen has a right to health care? What nerve suggesting the poors might deserve to not die from easily preventable illnesses or suffer for years from treatable diseases? So they took steps. Stern steps, powerful steps, very strongly disapproving steps. They passed the Ohio Healthcare Freedom Amendment. Just like everything the GOP does, the name is the opposite of the actual function, which added to the state constitution 2 critical items. First, no federal, state, or local law or rule shall prohibit the purchase or sale of health care or health insurance. 2, no federal, state, or local law or rule shall impose a penalty or fine for the sale or purchase of health care or health insurance. Now, the Republicans at the time were very proud of themselves. They'd done something to undermine the Affordable Care Act. President Obama sure would make a sad face when he found out about it. Good job all around. Fast forward to today, when the court pulled up the state constitution and said, see here where it says no state law can prohibit healthcare? Isn't that what this is? You trying to enact a state law that prohibits healthcare? Well, the state attorneys were flummoxed for a time because while denying true things is technically GOP party doctrine, but the judges wouldn't be swayed by simple declarative denial, and at least one of them knew it. "I know," one of them exclaimed, probably. "Let's try to argue that trans healthcare isn't really healthcare, so that part of the Constitution doesn't apply." Brilliant! Good job all around. So they assembled the usual experts, those pedigreed men with impressive names that they fly in from around the world to offer very expensive opinions before state legislatures all over the country. Men whose names you might know: Paul Roos, James Cantor, Stephen Levine. The experts testified, and the court listened. What they heard was that, according to the published ruling, that Dr. Cantor, quote, is not a physician, has never practiced as a licensed clinical psychologist in the United States, is not licensed to treat patients under the age of 16, and has never provided treatments to patients under the age of 16. Dr. Roos got a similar treatment, the court noting that, quote, he never diagnosed or treated a patient with gender dysphoria, and citing his written testimony in a previous paid gig where he opined that allowing trans kids to live was a form of child abuse. Dr. Levine, however, got off with less severe burns. That because he did have some degree of genuine qualifications, and because of that, he was compelled to testify that he cannot support a categorical ban on healthcare because trans healthcare is healthcare with proven beneficial outcomes. Oops! Meanwhile, the other team had actual experts. 22 organizations who deal with trans kids every day and see the good healthcare does, and the harm withholding that care does. They include the Pediatric Endocrine Society, the Society for Adolescent Health and Medicine, the American Psychological Association, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Pediatrics, and over a dozen more. It's true the state's sole semi-credible witness had already made it clear trans healthcare is healthcare, and therefore the state constitution applies, but getting extensive and unanimous verification from people who actually do have expertise in this area of medicine never hurts. So the court ruled that A, trans healthcare is healthcare, and effective, necessary healthcare at that. B, since the state constitution prohibits bans on healthcare, this ban is unconstitutional. C, there is no alternative means of treating transgender youth, which wasn't strictly necessary, but is nice to have as a matter of settled law. And D, additionally, parents have a fundamental right to seek medical care for their children, which is also lovely to have on the books. Not only is this ruling good news for restoring access to health care for Ohio's trans teens, but it also established anti-trans former doctors haven't got a leg to stand on, reasserted as a matter of law that gender-affirming care is both real and vital, added to parents' rights, and did it by way of a tool Republicans themselves put in place out of sheer spite for a past president. I guess, thanks, Obama, and thanks to the judges. Magnificently done. Following up on last week's story about the trans military ban, another federal judge has issued a temporary order blocking the Air Force from terminating 2 trans service members. As was reported previously on TransPositions Weekly, U.S. District Court Judge Reyes has instituted a preliminary injunction on Executive Order 14183, the order that infamously called trans service members dishonorable and disloyal, among many other things, noting that it is blatantly discriminatory, unsupported by any evidence, and, quote, soaked in animus. In spite of that injunction, the Air Force was continuing with the expulsion of the 2 airmen named in this case, Master Sergeant Logan Ireland and Staff Sergeant Nicholas Bade. Both were removed from their postings despite having served with distinction and were slated to be involuntarily separated this week. Jennifer Levi, a senior director at GLAD Law, one of the several organizations involved in this case, said, quote, these airmen have risked everything to protect American freedoms. They deserve better than becoming the targets of a calculated political purge. In granting this new order, U.S. District Judge Christine O'Hearn wrote that both plaintiffs demonstrated both a likelihood of success in challenging the ban and the risk of irreparable harm, including loss of career, damage to their reputations, and violation of their constitutional rights. Quote, the loss of military service under the stigma of a policy that targets gender identity is not merely a loss of employment. It is a profound disruption of personal dignity, medical continuity, and public service. While Pentagon officials told Judge Reyes in D.C. that separation actions would not begin until Friday, March 28th, Ireland and Bade were scheduled for termination proceedings Wednesday the 26th, hence the need for immediate injunctive relief. Staff Sergeant Bade said in an interview, quote, for 6 years I've strived to embody what Americans expect from their military. Expertise, character, and leadership. Now I've been prevented from serving the troops I mentor and the nation I've committed my life to protect. Master Sergeant Ireland, a veteran of 14 years, had been involved with a training mission in New Jersey when he was interrupted with an order to leave the base and placed on administrative leave. His absence leaves his team, based in Hawaii, without a leader. One of many gaping holes in the U.S. military this incompetently executed ban has created for no reason other than prejudice. Quote, we're cutting off our nose to spite our face, one veteran wrote. Military excellence and readiness, my ass. As Ireland pointed out, quote, thousands of transgender service members like me fill critical roles requiring years of specialized training. Removing us creates dangerous operational gaps across every theater. Fortunately, for the time being, the courts are working hard to protect the service members who protect the United States, despite the best efforts of the current president and Secretary Hegseth to cripple our military. A few weeks ago, New Zealand resident and beefcake Mark Miramet became a world champion bodybuilder. He is a man who accomplishes goals. He dreamed of living in New Zealand and did it when he moved from the Netherlands in 2009. Dreamed of serving in the military and did that in 2014 once he met the country's 5-year residency requirement. While he waited, he pursued his transition. Mark has said in past interviews that not only did he know as a child, everyone else did too. His siblings introduced him as, quote, more of a brother, and his parents gave up on trying to get him to behave or dress like a girl in early adolescence. By age 35, he'd reached a point where he couldn't put it off any longer, and described the process as not something that worried him, but a great relief. Quote, I just had to transition, Mark told Stuff magazine in 2020. It was really hard trying to be a girl when I'm not. He also became the first, and at the time only, person to transition before joining the New Zealand Defense Force. For the first few years, nobody knew. Mark said, quote, you don't transition to tell everyone you transitioned. You want to be yourself. That changed in 2019 when the Defense Force announced an exhibition to celebrate 25 years of the organization being GSM inclusive. Mark sat for photos and recounted a bit of his story for the effort. He said he's become more open because he's realized people need more education on this topic, and being visible is the first step. Since retiring from the service, he wanted to become a bodybuilder. Now, he's a world champion. For his next goal, he said he wants to be a positive role model for transgender athletes. He told the press of New Zealand, quote, I don't do it for the stage. I work out because it's good for my mental health, and I enjoyed the structure and the routine. It was 32 weeks of competition prep and cutting and dicing and training twice a day. Competing was literally the icing on the cake, and I enjoyed that after as well. He won the over 50 men's fitness division in Canberra, Australia, after winning regional and national competitions in New Zealand earlier in the year. It is a class of bodybuilding that focuses on leanness, muscle symmetry, and looking like a men's fitness model rather than how big one's muscles are, although muscle development is still important. Mark wanted to motivate others and encourage those with negative perspectives about transgender people in sports to think differently. He's become passionate about challenging stereotypes, especially surrounding trans people and what the public thinks we should look like. Mark said that when people find out he's trans, they often seem surprised, saying something like, wait a minute, you are just as much a guy as we are. Quote, you can do whatever you want to do with your life, he said, referring to having missed out on many opportunities while growing up due to the lack of trans role models, a gap in public awareness he hopes to help fill for others now. Quote, sport is extremely important for people's mental health, connection, and being linked to the community, he said. While in the Defense Force, he'd become a psychologist, and now he uses those skills to coach others at the University of Canterbury. Quote, "You can achieve more than you think. Like, I never thought I would ever make it to a world stage. It's not about winning a world title. It's about your mental and physical wellness on a day-to-day basis, and you can do that in any type of sport. It's so important that anybody can just engage in sports," he said. "It's a little bit of my duty to get the word out for a younger generation coming through to know that they can be included." Quote, "Transgender people have all the right to live with pride in society," said Minister Bindu at the Varnapakittu Festival in Kerala last week. Varnapakittu translates in English to vibrant colors, which is a fantastic name for a trans culture festival. This year marks the 4th festival, which highlights and promotes creativity and expression for transgender people of every flavor. The Ministry of Social Justice considers the event to be critical, both for the community, which is facing so much strife in recent years, and for India as a whole, which benefits from this patch of vibrant color in its social tapestry far beyond words. Like every nation so gifted. Bindu said one effect of the festival is changing society's mind about culture being based on binaries, which don't actually exist in nature, and the increased visibility also increases acceptance of members of this vulnerable group. It is easy to hate the unknown, but harder when you see the humanity. Kerala takes the well-being of trans citizens seriously. The first province in India with an actual transgender justice board within the Ministry of Social Justice. And several of the board's members spoke about various programs available to trans people, between performances by groups of dancers, musicians, and among a sea of artists and crafters of all kinds. Among these are a student benefit, financial assistance for those recovering from gender reassignment surgery, and Minister Bindu announced plans for a transgender crisis intervention center in Ernakulam, saying the center will function as a combination helpline and shelter, providing much-needed support in 2 critical areas. We've talked about the trans community in India a few times on this program, so now is a good time to mention that while India still has problems with how society interacts with trans people, there has been a positive effort to make things better, and they're pulling way ahead of the United States in this, like in so many other areas. For example, India enacted the Transgender Persons Protection Act back in 2019. 6 years ago. This act includes the right to self-ID, the right to updated documents, discrimination protection, and the creation of a National Transgender Council to advise the government on matters relating to trans people and our well-being, among other things. That's not to say it's all cupcakes and roses. While Indian culture has acknowledged trans people exist for thousands of years, the traditional social structure placed us as outcasts by and large. That's why events like this festival are necessary, and why it's so wonderful to see trans people given the chance to stand up, stand out, and shine. The following is based on an essay by Faye Seidler, Community Uplift Program Manager at North Dakota's Harbor Health Initiative. I've made minor edits for clarity and for the wider audience, but I think you'll find the spirit of the message inspiring. Somewhere lost in the cultural scuffle of what it means to be transgender is that it is an absolute joy to experience the world in such a way. When you take away the societal prejudice and extreme political rhetoric, what remains is something amazing and beautiful. Across so many cultures, throughout all of history, trans people have been honored, celebrated, and revered. While the world looks scary for people who are trans, It's worth acknowledging that there have never been so many parents who love and accept their trans children. There has never been better medical research on treating trans youth or access for those youth to get care. There is so much more literature, education, science, and hope than there has ever been before. That may seem strange given the hundreds of laws and handful of executive orders that attempt to snuff out the light that is trans people. But still, there have never been more of us out in the open. Because this is the first time everyone in the nation knows what it means. And for once, people don't grow up spending decades confused about why life doesn't make any sense. We grow up with the language to describe ourselves, even if we can't tell anyone else. We know why we feel so out of place. The reason for all of those laws is a top-down political bullying attempt to enforce a culture that people largely don't agree with. All of this effort is necessary as a desperate attempt to cling to an anti-queer sentiment of yesteryear. And despite all of that, anyone who is compassionate can clearly see the hate. Anyone who is scientific can easily see how the bigot's house of cards falls. And at the end of the day, when the moral panic runs its course, culture will realize that the dangerous gender ideology was the anti-woke crowd burning minorities at the stake. Yet, that is all big picture stuff. Life is getting better for some and getting a lot worse for others. With as many kids as there are in loving homes, there are a significant number of kids who struggle to survive day to day, who grow up around a culture that tries to tell them they're wrong or confused or evil, who feel alone and afraid. What's lost in the discourse of trans topics is often trans people. We are part of every group. We are of all political parties, races, faiths, jobs, and communities. There is no singular feature or belief universal to all of us except a shared experience of not fitting into the box assigned at birth. That is the big crime that has generated 5 years of constant think pieces, political attacks, and executive orders. So, from now through Trans Day of Visibility, March 31st, allies and organizations are raising the flag. Participation is simple. Allies are encouraged to change their social media pictures to the trans flag, so trans folks everywhere can see that despite the negative rhetoric from lawmakers or the federal government, there are people who love them and want them to be happy. And the bigots will see too, which might just start to clue them in to how far in the wrong they've sunk. If you enjoy content like this, make sure to subscribe. TransPositions Weekly is the first and only weekly trans news show in the universe, and we need your support to keep this show going. Contribute at patreon.com/TheTransPositions. Spread the word all over social media to let people know we're here, and tell us what stories matter to you by joining the community on Discord. Discord, of course, is where the memes live, and our meme of the week was posted by Triceratops. And if you want to be invested with divine powers to reshape the heavens themselves, join us. Also, if you have good news concerning trans people you'd like to see reported on, you can tell us about that in the Discord as well. For the TransPositions, I've been Ember Belrad.
I will always, always, always stand up for the dolls. Always, till my dying breath. And I will never understand the girls that don't. I truly think that trans women are the best of us. The best of us. And not only do I not think that they take anything away from my experience as a cis woman, I think that they are actually one of the purest forms of womanhood and highlight some of the most beautiful parts of womanhood. Because what do you mean that in our patriarchal society, you are going to throw away all of the privilege that you have as someone that was born a man and choose girlhood, even when it means you have a life expectancy of 40 and you instantly become the most at-risk woman in your society? Because they're exactly right. I would choose my girlhood at knife point every fucking time. And the fact that we have a group of women who are all risking their own personal safety just to have the gumption to say, no, I am a woman and here I am, and we're not standing behind them in unison is crazy to me. Like, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. That's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I will always stand behind the dolls. Like, they're not stupid. They see how y'all are treating the other trans girls, and they're still coming out. Every day we get a new one, and it's fucking beautiful. They're still choosing girlhood, even in the fucking face of all of this. Despite all of the horrors, they're still choosing girlhood. I think they're the best of us. How does any woman see someone fighting that hard to be one of us, and your gut reaction is to call them a man? No, babe, they're more woman than you will ever be. They had to fight for their life in order to call themselves one.
Oh, God, I'm so tired, man. Mm, 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 mm.
Just like Thursday, the boat in trouble. This time, Nomura was able to wriggle off the hook with 1:30 to go, and now they hold a favored position. Not going to have it. They called to each other. Game here is to get up to full speed. KR makes his move first, and he'll be going faster when the gun goes off. Go down below the line. 20. 17. 14. 13. 4, 3, 2, 1, gun! Another clean start and another good job by Dylan Bob.
Hey, I've been unmuted. It's awesome. Hi, everyone. Here we are. I love Ember's segments. The good news is always good, and there's always good news. Has been, there have always been bits of good news, especially for individual trans people. My good news came in 1998 when I realized this is something I have to do, want to do, and can do. It takes an awful lot of effort to be who you are. It takes a lot of growing up. And I think part of every trans person's life experience is that realization that the best news that we can give ourselves and the best news we can give to our friends, our family, our coworkers is that we are. and that we deserve a place. And I think maybe some politicians need to realize that our experience in that regard is not a bane to a successful society, but an encouragement for society as a whole to do better. And so we're going to just take a look at what could be an angry story, and in a lot of ways is an angry story. And maybe take a look at how politicians are dropping the ball when it comes to this issue. So here we go. We're going to just share the darn screen and do the thing, which is always interesting. I understand. Let's proceed. It's telling me. So let's proceed. Why are Democrats pivoting to transphobia? Let's do this. Why are Democrats pivoting to transphobia? This is a piece written by Jude Elson and S. Doyle today, the 27th of March, 2025. And yeah, it's a good piece. Representative Sarah McBride, Democrat of Delaware, the first openly trans woman in Congress, says it's time for the Democratic Party to take a big stance on transphobia. Quote, we have to create space in our tent, McBride told news site Not Us last week, insisting that a majoritarian coalition is going to have to include people who have a range of thoughts on trans rights. She's right. But and Representative McBride is in a very unique position. She's won the trust of her constituents who sent her to Congress to do for them. Right? They recognize that she has the experience, the desire, and the talent to do for them. And she wants to get on with it. And I don't blame her. I thought her stance in it wasn't the foreign affairs. It was, can't recall what the committee was, but it's a subcommittee. And when the Republican committee chair introduced her, he misgendered her in the act of doing so. And she turned right around and said, "Thank you for the introduction, Madam Chair," which was sly and cool. And immediately the ranking member stood up for her, which we reported here, thought it was great. It is great. I think Representative McBride is in a unique position. So anyway, disappointing as it is to hear McBride speak this way, she's not alone. Representative Greg Landsman, this is now, here's a horse of a different color. Democrat of Ohio told Not Us that Democrats could be a little judgy and annoying about supporting trans people. And maybe we should be open-minded and appreciate that not everyone is where we are. Well, Representative Landsman, if not everyone is where you are as a leader, perhaps you could guide them there. Not necessarily by beating them over the head, but by standing for the people you purport to support. In widely circulated comments, Representative Seth Moulton, Democrat of Massachusetts, oh gosh, you know, the representative that stood up for Ms. McBride was also from Massachusetts. I'm from Massachusetts. God save the Commonwealth. 250th anniversary of the Battle of Lexington and Concord. I am a native daughter of the town of Lexington. So I'm a little disappointed in Representative Moulton, who claimed that Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone and that I have two little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete. A half dozen other Democrats have quietly or not so quietly retrenched on trans issues in the past few months in ways that have ranged from the actively vile. Rahm Emanuel says he would have pretended to spy on on girls in school bathrooms. That is rather vile, but then again, Rahm Emanuel has always been vile. Let's remember who Rahm Emanuel is. Rahm Emanuel was an advisor to Bill Clinton, who did the notorious "don't ask, don't tell" thing. To the merely opportunistic Pete Buttigieg, whose politics tends to shift whenever the wind changes, has removed his pronouns from his bio on X. You know, responding to accusations of virtue signaling by implicitly acknowledging that telling what your pronouns are as a matter of course is not a very strong approach, Mayor Pete. Most ominously, California Governor Gavin Newsom, who is rumored to be considering, he's running a presidential bid in 2028, has made a point of showcasing his anti-trans animus on his podcast, calling trans girls' participation in sports teams, quote, deeply unfair, in a conversation with right-wing influencer Charlie Kirk. If that choice of guest seems ominous, you're not wrong. This is the same podcast where Newsom recently reached across the aisle to Steve Bannon of bathtub stimulant fame. This is all supposedly fallout from the 2024 election, which, according to many Democrats, was lost by defending trans people. Future forward, a Harris-supporting super PAC for Canadians, an organization that exists for Canadians and other, sane nations. An organization that exists to fund political campaigns says that a single Trump attack ad claiming that Kamala Harris is for they, them, shifted the race 2.7 percentage points in Trump's favor. Pundit Matt Yglesias, another, Jesus Christ, big media Matt, from the old bloggy days, if you don't know, Matt, presented himself as a up and coming so and so, and he's turned into a media shill. It's like, if those of you who are old enough to recall the Iraq War days, the turn of the century, uh, uh, there was a blog called Media Whores Online, and that is kind of a media whore whose analysis is massively popular within the Democratic establishment. It says on where else? His Substack, which, by the way, is populated by tons of Nazis, that progressives, quote, are not paying attention to the potential electoral ramifications of supporting trans participation on women's sports teams. And it is important for them not to die on that hill, because Harris ran on trans rights and supposedly lost on them. No Democrat can ever run on them again. Of course, it would be hard for most Democrats to die on the hill of their ardent support for trans people, given that they've never strongly supported them in the first place. Kamala Harris is a case in point. Prior to the 2024 election, Harris was unpopular with queer voters because of her track record on trans issues. 2015, as California Attorney General, she fought to deny gender-affirming care to an incarcerated trans person. She spearheaded 2018's FOSTA SESTA, an anti-sex work law that disproportionately affected trans people, on account of the fact that trans people often go into sex work because they cannot find other work because of the discrimination against them. In an op-ed for Out magazine, lawyer and trans advocate Chase Strangio called her an arm of the state fighting to lock people in cages and defending policies that destroyed lives and communities, unquote. Even in 2024, when she was met with a warmer welcome from the community, she was notably ambivalent on trans issues, refusing to make a strong case for gender-affirming care outside of saying that decisions should be left to the doctors. And she's right. But that's not enough. That's, stepping outside the article that I'm reading here. But that's not enough. It's true. But if you want to make the case that decisions should be left to doctors, patients, their families, their coworkers, the people that they know in society, then you need to make the case that trans people are people, real people, who are hurt, really hurt, substantially hurt by the kind of vile calumnies about us that are spread by the other side, specifically in that ad. Kamala Harris is for they, them. Kamala Harris, you could have said, I am for they, them, and you didn't. People like Matt Iglesias, people who are right in there with your campaign, are blaming us for your lack of spine. Do you think that the issue was devised to give you any kind of wiggle room? It wasn't. It was devised to be a meat hook to hang yourself on because you look weak and stupid when you refuse to live up to your own rhetoric. Nobody's going to vote for you if you don't stand for something. If you select a group of people, you select a group of people out of a box and say, we believe in, and your overarching rhetoric is big tent politics and the inclusiveness, the beauty of the original motto of the United States of America, e pluribus unum, out of many one, that our strength lies in our diversity. And you roll over when one community is demonized. How is that a win? How is that a win? It wasn't until Trump's they/them ad and in his debate comments about transgender operations on illegal aliens in prison. I mean, as if that's even a real fucking thing. You might as well be talking about, you might as well be talking about in 5 years we're going to be colonizing Mars, and me and Elon are going to be butt bros up on the big Mons. I mean, the fuck. That Harris's campaign was associated with trans issues, and then only for the positions Trump claimed she held, rather than the ones she actually did. And because she did not declare that, again, I'm going off the topic here. Not off the topic, but off the writing, which is great. She didn't even articulate her own goddamn positions. That's not a winning strategy for anyone, is it? Call me crazy, but it doesn't seem that I know what Donald Trump's positions are. I disagree with them. And one of the major a locus of attacks of Republicans against Democrats is you don't have any positions. And Harris, in refusing to utterly reject this bullshit, laid herself wide open to that, to being, not strong enough to lead. Why is that? Because she wasn't leading. And then she sends her, then we get Matt Iglesias and all these other people out there saying, well, it was the trans people themselves that caused this debacle. It's Still, let's agree for the sake of argument, the Democrats are embracing anti-trans politics to win elections rather than as an expression of sincere anti-trans bias. If that's the case, then we should be looking not just at how their policy stands to harm trans people, though I selfishly would like to live, but whether it works. The answer is it doesn't. And this is, I agree completely, it doesn't. So this is, you're getting a dual editorial here. Newsom's turn on trans rights, which he vocally supported until very recently, is a preview of what reaching across the aisle will look like in 2028, just as Ron DeSantis' carpet bombing of Florida's LGBTQ 2S plus population gave us an early look at the 2024 election. Yet, if Newsom has similar ambitions to Ron DeSantis, he may be similarly doomed. Why? Because of the same goddamn reason. DeSantis looked like an idiot. Both candidates tried to represent themselves as reasonable alternatives to Trump by partially embracing his cultural war positions, but in the past 3 electoral cycles that taught us anything, it's that the American people are unwilling to vote for a softer, friendlier Trump substitute when they can vote for the man himself. If Trump doesn't run in 2028, if they can, give him enough ketamine to prop him up, he probably friggin' will. But it seems like everybody in the goddamn universe has forgotten that people are in fact mortal. They die and stuff, that when it's done, you sleep on the side of the road. I mean, dude, Trump's old. It'll be more or less the first time he's ever accepted constitutional limits on his presidency. Don't hold your breath. Yeah, exactly. Similarly, there's little hope of gaining ground by making concessions on statewide bills, if only because the goal of these bills is, in many instances, not to be passed into law, but to shift the Overton window to the right and even more, and make more extreme legislation possible. You can already see this happening as Democrats decided it's reasonable to bar trans girls from sports teams. Texas Republicans have introduced a bill that would make it a felony for anyone to identify as trans at all. But we'll drop the link to this article in the chat in the description below, and here's the link. I'll drop it right now in the chat. Go and read it. It's really good, and I have to say, it's on point. It's always been hard. Always been hard for a trans person to express. First of all, I can't tell you. I mean, it was really hard to convince, or not to convince, but to express myself through transition 27 years ago. It is so much harder now, I think, because of a concentrated effort on a political scale to make my very life a matter of political consideration and debate. Back then, people often said to me, "I do not understand it, but I know you, and if that's what you need to do, I'll be here." For me, and every trans person's experience is different, but for me, that was most of what I experienced. Some of the social consequences were harsh. People would support me, but they wouldn't support me full-throatedly or wholeheartedly in terms of keeping me employed, for instance, and keeping in terms of uh, uh, staying in touch. However, it was, I think, for me, the personal interactions were more positive than negative, which was important for me to be able to carry on and all of that. And really, in the years from uh, 1998 to almost 20, you know, to 2015 to 2018, really, when I first started talking about these issues, uh, that was where things lay for me. But the worm turned in the political sphere, and now it's become very, very difficult to even be. It's very difficult to be. I don't talk to be visible, right? So we're talking about Trans Day of Visibility. Amber was talking about that. It's difficult to be visible. It's a hell of a lot easier to not be. Different, you know. Sure, it's another closet, but the clothes are nicer. I've never been a clothes fiend. I'm an old hippie chick. What the hell, I kind of have fun, but whatever. It's so much harder now. And I don't think Democrats win. I don't think allies are allies when they refuse to be allies. When they refuse to just stand up and acknowledge our humanity from outside of our skin. So when Sarah McBride goes, "Thank you, Madam Chair," that's a trans person doing that. That's a trans person using that little bit of jujitsu to show how absurd the chairman of that committee was being. And all of us have learned ways to turn those moments when somebody's being a dick. But we do need people to full-throatedly call out the people who are being dicks as people who are being dicks. Because we can't. I don't know if I'm making myself clear here, but we can't. We don't have the strength. We don't have the capacity to do it because every single time we do, it's another turn on us. How would you feel if every single time you open your mouth, you're called a liar? When in our world, when we were being dishonest, well, let me rephrase that. We were trained to be dishonest to ourselves. We were trained to suppress our nature, what some of the older books would call our true selves. We were trained to not acknowledge that. I mean, our opportunity to be honest was in coming to terms with who we are as people. Anyway, go read this article. Democrats, you want to start winning elections, start standing for something. And educate yourself on trans issues, because you can't have the excuse any longer that I didn't think you were going to ask me that question. No, educate yourself. Educate yourselves. If you want to be an ally, stand up. People respect that. We will. Other voters will too, because we know we've convinced people to support us individually. And you should trust us and trust our experience in that regard. For the Transpositions, I'm Stephanie Helms.
Breaking news, transposition family. This just came to me from the one and only Dr. Ben, who you saw in the chat just a minute ago. They were courteous enough to provide me with some details about this, but there has been a second judge who has issued an injunction against the government on the transgender ban and purge. This one is effective immediately. Immediately, like right now, it's already effective. The effect of the court's order is to maintain the status quo of military policy regarding both active duty and prospective transgender service that existed nationwide immediately before President Trump issued the military ban. This order applies to all plaintiffs and any similarly situated individuals nationwide, including those serving our country. The government's arguments are not persuasive, and it's not especially close question on this record. The government unrelenting reliance on deference to military judgment is unjustified in the absence of any evidence supporting the military's, in quotes, new judgment reflected in the military ban. In it, equally considered and questionable judgment, that very same military had only the week before permitted active duty plaintiffs and some thousands of others to serve openly. Any evidence that such service over the past 4 years harmed any of our military, inarguably critical aims would be front and center, but there is none. So, yeah, new injunction effective immediately. This is Italy shilling. So this is shilling versus the United States. And that's what's happened. Injunctions in place. We are currently, and we mentioned earlier that Judge Reyes was giving them some time to formulate an appeal on that. But yeah, that window's closed now with this injunction right here. So always happy to bring you cutting edge breaking news here on the Transpositions. Other than this, we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming because we have Transposition Sports. Transposition Sports is coming up next. So stick around and remember to be kind, take care. And this has been Bree with the Transpositions Weekly.
You're here to perform a gender verification test. Remove your upper clothes.
Of course, I did not. I told them it's fine. I'm a female. I don't care. If you want to see I'm a woman, I'll show you my vagina.
Sex testing in sports. A relic of the Avery Brundage era. Archaic, misogynistic, racist.
Over the next few weeks, the new regulations will be drafted and a pre-clearance tests provider and process and timeline will be agreed.
It's the new policy for world athletics in 2025. Hello again, everybody. This is Transposition Sports. I'm Carly Chardonnay-Webb. World Athletics, the world governing body for track and field, announced Monday that chromosomal testing on women athletes, a practice not seen in elite sport since the International Olympic Committee stopped the practice in 1999, will return this year in a timetable yet to be decided but hoped to start in time for this fall's World Athletics Outdoor Track and Field Championships in Tokyo. The testing would involve a one-time for each athlete pre-clearance exam involving a cheek swab test to establish chromosomes and a dry blood test to assess testosterone levels. The exact standards will be finalized in the coming weeks. World Athletics President Sebastian Coe made his announcement after a meeting of the World Athletics Council coming off last weekend's World Indoor Track and Field Championships. The rationale for the change was a repeat of his main theme of his failed bid for the presidency of the International Olympic Committee, protecting women's sport.
It's important to do it because it maintains everything that we've been talking about, and particularly recently, about not just talking about the integrity of female women's sport, but actually guaranteeing it. And this, we feel, is a really important way of providing confidence and maintaining that absolute focus on the integrity of competition. I wouldn't have set off down this path in 2016, 2017 to protect the female category in sport if I'd been sort of, anything other than prepared to take, the challenge head on. We've been to the Court of Arbitration on our DSD regulations. They've been upheld. And they've again been upheld after appeal. So we will doggedly protect the female category and we'll do whatever is necessary to do it. And we're not just talking about it.
The policy is designed to first ensure that transgender women will not compete in the women's category, but that's redundant since trans women were banned in 2023. but it would also institute a change in regulations regarding cisgender and/or intersex women with what the governing body terms as differences in sexual development, also known as the Caster-Semenya rule. The rules that affected athletes such as Semenya and 2020 Summer Olympic silver medalist Christine Mbuma of Namibia. The new regulations would eliminate them from competition completely. Now, Coe stated that the policy came from recommendations from a working group that's been looking at alternatives since the policy revisions of 2 years ago that banned trans women and ushered in tighter DSD restrictions. A similar working group is an effort that incoming IOC President Kirsty Coventry said she would champion and form going forward. The possible effects on elite sport would be far-reaching, and it would have an impact on a number of governing bodies. Supporters, such as the US-based Independent Council on Women's Sports and affiliate anti-trans activists, are already calling for such efforts to filter down to the collegiate and even the scholastic level. Others, such as British swimming Olympic medalist and professional transphobe Sharon Davies, applauded the effort as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they've had their DSD difference, problems as well. So this is differences of sexual development. So they are two very separate things. One is, trans identifying athletes who are athletes that know that they're male, now deciding that they want to adopt the identity of the opposite sex. DSD athletes are those with a difference of sexual development. So the famous ones like Semenya are males, were born males, but they had internal testes. So when they were picked up, they went like this, went, oh, must be a little girl. They wrote an F on their passport and off they go. But they are male and they go through male puberty. And that was dominating in track and field. In fact, in Rio, the first 3 winners on the medal podium were all males. And the first female was 4th and never got on the podium. So their whole life would have been very different. And I speak out because of the East German era, different process, but same result. Young women pumped full of testosterone dominated the world of women's sport for 20 years. And I just didn't want to see that happen again to another generation of our young girls.
In opposition, worries about privacy and bodily autonomy were made clear. Here's what athlete and activist Chris Mosier had to say.
Coe said that the process would be non-invasive, but truly there's nothing that's not invasive about this. This is people's private biomedical information, and there are real safety concerns with having this on file in an office somewhere. This is not actually about transgender athletes. This is going to harm all cisgender women who, even if this is just a cheek swab, it's asking women to give over information that male athletes are never asked to disclose. This issue also comes on the heels of US President Donald Trump saying that there's only 2 sexes, and the LA 2028 Olympic Games happening in the United States, and the Trump administration saying they're going to take great efforts to make sure that trans athletes cannot participate. Every woman in running should have serious concerns about this new policy.
The return of sex testing is a step backward for women's sports at a time when women's sports are booming. Now for Coe and perhaps Coventry, this is all as much about politics as it is about sport. Take Sebastian Coe, former Tory MP, stands with US President Donald Trump and his executive order banning transgender women from women's sports. And there's also the matter that Trump is calling for restrictions on who will be allowed to enter the country for the 2028 Los Angeles Summer Olympics. Trump has also hinted at where the dividing line will be by erroneously pointing out a well-known athlete from the last Olympics.
And who could forget last year's Paris Olympics, where a male boxer stole the women's gold medal after brutalizing his female opponent so viciously that she had to forfeit just after 46 seconds, and she was a championship fighter.
By the way, she has a name, Mr. President, and Amani Khalif, the Algerian gold medalist in boxing, responded to the president like this.
Your dream would be to win Olympic gold.
The second gold medal, of course.
A second gold medal in America.
In America, Los Angeles.
Donald Trump has not been very polite to you. Does that concern you?
بالنسبة لهذا الشيء يعني راح نجاوبك بسؤال واحد. يعني الرئيس الأمريكي هو دار قرار، هذا قرار يخص الدولة الأمريكية، ولكن أنا حبيت نوضح أنه أنا مانيش متحول جنسي، يعني ما يخوفني ولا شيء، لأنه أنا الحقيقة مانيش متحول جنسي فقط.
The fact is, certain people buy the nonsense that groups like Karens against women's sports and the politicians who support them tried to sell, even when they're selling veiled racism like this. Or the vitriol that was aimed at soccer international Barbara Banda. The Orlando Pride FC star was the target of racist and transphobic chants at a match last weekend with Gotham FC. Now, first, Banda is a cisgender woman. Second, the nonsense thrown at her began by the pens of anti-trans sports writers and a certain children's book author, yeah, you know that one, J.K. Rowling. This policy will give more credence to all of that nonsense. And at the same time, it completely throws the IOC's framework on fairness in the trash basket. The main thrust of these guidelines is that regulation must start from the idea that no athlete should be precluded from competing or excluded from competition on the exclusive ground of an unverified, alleged, or perceived unfair competitive advantage due to their sex variations, physical appearance, and/or transgender status. The question we have to ask right now is, how far does this go? Could we be going as far as the naked parades? Scenes like the one you're about to watch happened in sports history and just might be a possibility for sports' future.
Registration number 913. You're here to perform a gender verification test approved by the National Athletic Association. Event.
High jump.
Country.
Spanish.
What is your gender?
I a woman.
Since when?
Always.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Remove your upper clothes. All of it. Open your arms. Open your arms. Remove all your clothes. Turn around. Put your hand on the floor without bending the knees. Are you sure, woman?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Stand up.
It's over.
No, it's not.
But here she goes. She's on her way once again. And just to re-quote her, I just want to run naturally, she said. I am a woman, and I just happen to run quickly.
Special thanks to the Let Her Run Project for that video. And what you just saw is how far the rabbit hole could go. This policy by World Athletics is a frightening return to a horrid past for women in sports. All mainly due to anti-trans hysteria now. And a lot of cis women, many of whom are neither white nor from the West, will suffer because of it. And now a trans joy alert, because kind of needed given what we just heard. Cal Calamia, one of the coolest cats in sport, pushed for a non-binary division at the Tokyo Marathon. Well, race organizers listened, and last week Calamia was part of a tough field in Tokyo, and all they did was win. They went out and won it. Inaugural non-binary division winner of the Tokyo Marathon. Here's a little look inside what was a winning weekend.
Hey everyone, I'm going to continue to say this like a lot, but thank you so much for coming. I'm so glad you're here. We are experiencing an important moment in history. Oh my god. Let's go. And then we'll flip the Good 20 seconds. 20 seconds behind. Cow! Woo! Yeah, and
doing whatever it takes to make sure that the back on the floor.
That Cal Calamia is such a cool cat, and speaking of cool cats, it's me, Kirby the Cat. Coming up next on Transposition Sports, trans athletes are fighting back in the UK. There's a trans woman who plays some field hockey who's going to court for her right to play the game she loves. And Carly's going to have more on lies, dang lies, and high school track. It seems that the Karens against women's sports are lying about a high school kid again. Clumps in the litter box, I'm telling ya. That and more to come. This is Transposition Sports. But first, some messages from Skylar Bylar and the Angry Gay Grandpa. Yeah, you got some time. Get your Kleenex ready.
Just about fairness. This is basic biology. This is basic fairness. Like, this just makes sense. Trans women should not play women's sports. I know you've heard this. I've heard it 5 million times, but we're now hearing more and more politicians and people who are theoretically well educated, who should know what they're talking about. We're hearing people who are LGBTQ plus inclusive, at least they have been in the past. We're hearing people who are like, I'm an ally, but not to trans athletes. And some of them are even saying, oh, Democrats have gone too far. The left has gone too far. Wokeness has gone too far because of the inclusion of trans athletes. I've even heard people say that we lost the election because of trans athletes. This is false. This is called scapegoating. Trans athletes do not threaten sports and have never threatened sports. And again, research can support that. So then why are these people shifting? I know you've had it in your life. You've heard somebody say, yeah, I support people. I believe Skylar is a man, but trans athletes, I'm not so sure about that. If you've heard people say this in your life, then you need to come to my workshop, Trans Athletes Belong, where we'll myth bust all of these things, these lies that people are telling about trans athletes. This is probably one of the conversations of our time, and most people don't know what they're talking about. We've got politicians and people in power, commentators, presidents saying things that are completely incorrect, intentionally to trick the American public. Why? To garner power. And the reason it's working is because they're using this language of protection. We need to protect women. We need to protect children. And hey, I can get on board with that. I want to protect women. I want to protect children. And so if I'm, the random person in the middle of the country who hasn't met a trans person, I'm like, sure, let me protect women and children. And you say that trans people are the problem. Great, trans people are the problem. Let me point my finger at them. This is why anti-trans rhetoric works so well. It's because it's manipulating a very good part of people, the part of people that wants to protect vulnerable populations. It's manipulating that protection and saying, here's the problem, when that's not actually the problem. And so we have to figure out how to have these conversations that will invite those in who have fallen prey to this type of logic. We must work on getting people to understand that trans people are not the problem, and that if we think that they are, we're getting tricked into the system, and we're not only going to hurt trans people, we're going to hurt ourselves as well. Trans athletes have never been a problem, trans people have never been a problem, but creating us as a problem, which is called transphobia, that hurts everyone. And therefore, all of us have a role we can play in stopping it.
So maybe I'll start a little bit softer.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine.
Dad?
Before you say anything, I just want to apologize for what I said this morning. I've been doing a lot of thinking. If you want to change your name, if you want to wear a dress.
It's a skirt, Dad.
Skirt? I don't know the kind of support you need, but let's get you some for all this transgender stuff.
Wait. Are you serious? Dad, what is this?
Oh, this is me supporting you. This is me saying I love you. This is me not losing you.
Love you, Dad.
Love you. Holly.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
And welcome back to Transposition Sports. I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb. Sports leagues, big and small, are looking at trans athletes with an eye towards banning them. And one of those governing bodies that have recently is England Hockey, who decided that starting with the next season, fall 2025, trans women and non-binary players will be banned from women's competition and be forced into an open category. Well, 3 players are seeking a legal challenge to this action, and one of them is joining us here. Philosopher and goalkeeper Rachel Saunders is a longtime aficionado of the game, and she's a trans woman standing up for a place in it. Rachel, welcome to Transposition Sports. It's good to have you.
It's good to be here.
Looking at your own journey playing the sport, what would you say some of your greatest moments were out there on that field?
Getting promoted last season was a really good feeling. Last game of the season, we knew we were already up, so it was just a really nice game that we won, and it was really enjoyable. Making some amazing saves and then coming off the pitch and being told that the opposition were giving me player of the match because I'd done that well. As a goalkeeper, you are either the zero or the hero. There's very little in between. So you can either have nothing to do all match and the team wins, or you can be so busy that you don't get a moment to think. Or there can be moments like there were moments last season where I made a couple of crucial saves, and those were the saves that won us the points that got us promoted.
Gut reaction. Why are you fighting this?
It's unfair. I was the first, as far as I'm aware, trans woman to play women's hockey at the university level back in 2000 when I went to the University of Central Lancashire. I played it for 3 years at the university level, then dropped it because of life, and then picked it up again when I went back to university in 2017. So I've been back playing for 8 years, and in that entire period, that 25 years from when I started to today, it's been trans inclusive and it's been very open to trans people. The prior policy, the one that's currently in effect, is trans inclusive. and it's very much framed around allowing trans people to play on the team that they identify with, provided they transition for a certain period of time.
So, make sure I got this right. You were all, played at the university level, trans women were allowed to play, wasn't an issue. What changed? What changed?
The short answer is gender critics have got their hooks into world sports policy. The long answer is I think England hockey saw the way that other sports were going, and they've taken advice from gender critical groups. So it's not 100% clear as to why they've done it, but there are enough breadcrumbs to suggest that they've had advice from gender critical people, and they've now taken that approach based on that advice.
So by the gender critical people, you're talking about the people like, what's her name at Fair Play for Women. And of course, there's the media crush that's been constant in the UK, especially over these last 5 to 6 years. With that in mind, what got you and a couple other players together?
I had inklings this may be happening, so I got legal advice last year about the best approach if this ban did come in. And so the day the new policy was introduced, I was immediately on the phone to a barrister, and then they put me in touch with solicitors. I then reached out across various forums and Reddit and other places, and we put together a coalition of the willing, and the other two members of the claim, they want to remain completely anonymous for very good reasons. So I agreed to be the front face of this because I've written a lot about it. I've got a lot of experience with this. And basically, we need to do this. Somebody needs to take a stand for this, publicly take a stand for this. Because if I don't do it, who will? I think that's my best approach to this.
What made you decide to move forward and be you? And how did this sport play into that?
I transitioned when I was 17. So at the time, this was back in 2000, I was one of the younger transitioners at the time in the UK. I was sports mad as a kid. I played rugby, cricket, football, cross country, swimming, you name it, I tried it. I wasn't particularly brilliant at any one sport, but in my teens, I have got a congenital ear condition, and basically I had an operation when I was 15 that took out part of my head. So I've got a thin skull on the side, which means I can't have any contact. So I can't play outfield sports of any variety. So when I went to university, I was looking for a way to get back into sport. So I picked up hockey, and I became a goalkeeper because you've got the full helmet. And as such, it's the only thing I can do in terms of team sports, in terms of even racket sports I can't play because of it. So for me to lose this, it's not like I can go and pick something else up. I literally will not be able to play team sports.
When you're not stopping shots, you're having thoughts. And I mean some deep thoughts. Yes. I want to read something that I picked up on Medium. The gender critical assertion that biological sex is the root of oppression, sex-based segregation is essential for the well-being of women. I refuse to engage with the root of this because ultimately becomes a matter of how many angels can dance on the head of a pin. How much does your philosophical view of trans rights, of the arguments, of the issues influencing how you plan to engage in the fight going forward for your right to play?
That's a very good question, because strictly speaking, it doesn't matter from a legal perspective. I can put forward as many philosophical arguments as I want. Ultimately, how the UK courts and England hockey see it is up for debate in terms of philosophy. However, outside of the legal process, my whole position is rooted in the idea that the moment you start trying to box bodies into whatever category you want to force them into, you're essentially start policing women's bodies. You saw this under Jim Crow, you saw this under Nazi Germany, you see this every single time they come for trans people, queer people, lesbians, gays, etc. They are trying to police women's bodies and how women can express themselves. And it's very interesting that the debate at the moment in the Democratic Party in America is focusing on trying to keep trans women out of sports. And if you listen to the language, it relates directly back to Jim Crow. It's the same language used under Jim Crow.
In what way?
Language you.
Because I want to get a little. I want my audience to get a little primer on this, because this is very interesting. Because a lot of people don't pick that connection up, but here you are across the Atlantic getting it perfectly. Expand on that.
Basically, if you look at any of the Jim Crow rhetoric, it was all about excluding black men from white women's spaces. It was about excluding black women from white women's spaces. It was about purity tests. If you were a quarter black, you were still black. If you were an eighth black, you were still black. The Nazis used exactly the same language to debate Jews, to debate Gypsies. Essentially, the same rhetoric is being recycled, rehashed, repeated, and it is junk. If you are trans and you are being excluded from these spaces, all you have to do is jump back 60, 70 years to segregation, and exactly the same language was being used to prevent black women and black men from entering those spaces. And nothing's changed. It's the same political parties that are doing it. It's the same political groups that are doing it. They've just unmasked themselves, and they've taken hateful anti-queer and anti-black rhetoric, and they're now applying it to trans people.
Exit question here. What's the next step as far as the legal challenge that you're planning? And how can people who care, especially sports fans, help with it?
In terms of sports fans helping, we've got the GoFundMe. So any donations are really appreciated on that. All the money goes directly to our solicitors. We're not keeping any of that for ourselves. As far as the next steps are concerned, because it's an ongoing legal process, I can't go into too much detail. We are with the process. We've submitted a claim to England Hockey, but that's about as far as I can go. As far as that, we haven't gone through the courts yet. So yeah, it's an interesting process, because I'm a legal scholar myself and I've worked in law, so I understand how it works. It's not a fast process, but any help and support and advice, any support is always appreciated. I'm always open if people want to have a chat with me, or people want to approach me on Medium or Twitter, or Blue Sky, or even Reddit. I'm always around. I'm very open about this because, as I said at the beginning, if I don't do something about this, I don't expect anybody else to carry this burden.
Finally tonight, spring is here. Spring sports are here. And some hostile attention has come to a high school kid in Oregon named Ada Gallagher. The high schooler caught the attention of the anti-trans crowd last year for winning a state championship at 200 meters. And she seems to be picking up where she left off from last year, and so are the professional transphobes. Gallagher, shown here at an early season triangular meet in Portland, won the 400 meters. And she did it going away. She's really running away with it. She won in 57.62 seconds and beat her nearest competitor by 8 seconds. And that led to a torrent of anti-trans nonsense from the usual suspects like Fox News. Transgender runner blows out competition. And of course, Sinclair's National Desk talked about how Ada won a Portland Interscholastic League championship last week. And of course, Riley Gaines is getting in it, and Outkick talked to a kid who doesn't run against Gallagher, but says having her in the field is, quote, disheartening. And it even reached across the pond. GB News called it transgender madness from America. Okay, professional transphobes, here's the facts. Yes, Ada Gallagher won that race by a sizable margin. She also won at 200 meters. At a triangular meet with two other high schools, and the season's maybe 2 weeks old. No, she didn't set a season record. Yes, she has the fastest time in Oregon at the moment by maybe a tenth or two. In the 200 meters, by the way, she's second fastest. One outlet said that Gallagher set a school record. Gallagher holds her school's record, but she set it last year at state. In fact, that school record at 400 meters is also the second fastest time for a schoolgirl in Oregon in the 400 meters in the history of the state. It's number 2 overall. The girl who beat her in that state final ran the fastest time in Oregon history. Oh, by the way, Joni Donaldson, she's doing very well, thank you. She's currently on scholarship running at Vanderbilt in the SEC. Yes, that SEC. Given that Gallagher is one of the best in the state, what she did at an early season meet is pretty much doing what you expect from a championship caliber kid running against kids who are frankly running track to hang out with their friends and get the gym class credit. Top competition in most places have similar results at this point of the season. But this is an example of how the professional transphobes operate. They know they're selling you nonsense, but they're betting on you not knowing. And they plan to pick on a high school junior who is a transgender girl who just wants to run track and be on the team and has a legal right to do so in the state of Oregon as the girl she is. Now, a message to people in Oregon who aren't buying the lies. First, media in Oregon, you need to be calling this out. Oregonian, the TV stations, the alternative papers, call this stuff out when you see it. Seriously. And to people in Portland and Oregon who care and who claim allyship, now's the time. Stand up for this kid. I want you showing up at some McDaniel High meets this year. Show up at the big invites, the PIL Championship. And if Ada gets that far, be at the hollow grounds of Hayward Field for the state finals. Be there. And I'm not asking you to protest. All you have to do is cheer. Cheer and clap. Cheer loud. Drown out the boos and the people who want to harass a high school kid just for being herself. And while you're at it, perhaps wear some matching t-shirts, from the sports bra. That cool watering hole in Portland that's all women's sports on the TVs all the time. Now, I mentioned the sports bra because when this girl and her family was catching all the smoke from the transphobes last May, the sports bra stepped up and publicly congratulated Gallagher on some excellent performances on the track. Now, with Trans Day of Visibility coming up, my task for you and my ask for you Oregonians is to stand up for the sport that you love. Track and field is a part of Oregon. It is Oregon. Don't let a bunch of professional transphobes and anti-trans politicians wreck it by coming at this kid the way they have. And to Ada Gallagher and her teammates at McDaniel High, get out the blocks, pump your arms, stick together, and win big this season. I'm rooting for you all the way to state. For Transposition Sports, I'm Carly Chardonnay Webb.
Hey team. Hey. I think Carly's crashed. That's all right. We'll continue on. We just need to wrap up the show anyway. We're half an hour over as we've been going here lately. But we had a lot to cover tonight. We had breaking news, so not a surprise at all that
Yeah, I went a little long. I got a little wrapped up in that story. It's so discouraging. As Carly was pointing out, it's like, yeah, it's going back to the bad old days, and it's just grim. I'm looking forward to going sailing in a month. Middle of May, I'll be out on the water again, competing again, and it'll be fun. But damn, the context is so different, and it's just hard. It's hard to watch.
Can I?
There's a song that Laura Nero wrote called Christmas, and it begins hopeful and then goes into minor key, and the lyrics are, "I love my country as it dies in war and fear before my eyes. I walk the streets where disrespect has been, the sins of politics, the politics of sin, the heartlessness that darkens my soul on Christmas." And you know what? That was 1968. It is so crushing for me, having lived through those times when that song was new, to have to watch this.
I want to just take a minute at the end of the show here to let everybody know. And I mean, I hated to bring Carly up here, and then they crashed out. But that just punctuates me and Steph. We both get off of work on Thursday nights and come immediately backstage because there's no break in between. Ember, since the very start, has left after the open panel because she is hustling and working. Carly is crashed out right now because she busts her ass every day, and we're doing all this while bringing you cutting edge, breaking news. Every week we are out here. This channel's not turning a profit. We're not making money doing this. We're doing this because
How can we turn a profit? Nobody's fucking paying us. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, sometimes we're just barking into the wind, but I would rather keep my voice raised, keep spreading the message, even if nobody's listening, even if the algorithm doesn't want to give us any kind of boost to spread our message. I don't care. We're still going to keep doing this because we love it, and we want to make sure.
But you know
that,
what? Right down here, there are ways
you can join our Discord or our Patreon. You can join our Discord too. But you can join. It takes some of the load off if you join the Discord and you see a story and you drop it into our news files, because that's where we generally go to bring you what's up for the week.
A lot of the stories tonight came out of the Discord.
Yeah, y'all are some of our best stories and best coverage come to us from the Discord server. So yeah, if you want to participate, if you want to contribute, we appreciate you. We're going to be here every week doing this, at least in some shape or form. Some rendition of the transpositions will appear on here every Thursday night, whether one of us needs a night off or something like that. That's fine. It's a stressful time for all of us, and there has been times where we all took a week off, like in November. But we're gonna keep raising the discourse, and we're gonna keep flying our flags, and we're not gonna shut up. We're not going away. If you think that suppressing trans people or queer people in general makes them go away, you need to open a history book. We don't go away. We just don't. We still exist.
Yeah, and we exist with a great deal of joy and experience, and it's a different way of being human, and it's all good. And also, before we go, please watch the Transatlantic Calling Show. Dr. Ben is a constant host there. Dr. Ben contributed to the show tonight by dropping that breaking news in Bree's lap. That was great. Our friends of the show, Arden Hart and Luxander, have both appeared here.
And we're still working on getting Josie, but we're gonna get her. Just you wait. We'll get Josie over here.
Yeah, and so please do support those folks over there. A channel that is doing different things. I mean, we're more of a weekly newscast, and they're more of a please call in and ask questions. I've been a host over there as well, so please do support support the
Carly
line,
too.
and
Carly's been
they
on.
support, and Carly has been there too. Yeah, so yeah, please do support those folks. We appreciate their support. So
All right, let's wrap things up. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We will be back next Thursday with more news. We appreciate you all showing up and sticking around to hear what we have to say. Much love. We have been the
Good night.
TransPositions. Good night.
That is it. I guess that means I got to hit the button, right?
Got to hit the
Is
button.
that what I'm doing right
Button
now? I hit
time.
the button.
Button time.